Hi, good evening. It's Miriam and welcome to Cooking Uncovered. And tonight I'd love to be able to show you how I do my turkey stuffing. And the reason I'm doing that tonight is because one of my students at school, Ronnie, great student, his mom says she's looking for a great turkey stuffing recipe. So here's one of my adaptations of my stuffing. And to tell you the honest truth, anytime I go to make stuffing for turkey or for chicken or for pork tenderloin, I really do use what I have in my house. But the base of what I do is always the same. I always start with butter and extra virgin olive oil and onions and celery. Now, a little hint. See the celery? All those leaves, I use that for the stuffing. I don't bother throwing it away. I save this, and this is what I use. So this is 1, 2, 3, about 4 stalks of celery. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 1 carrot right now into my processor, right into my processor. I'm just going to chunk up my celery, and I'm going to throw that in the processor too, into great big chunks. Throw that in. And I'm going to get that onto the stove with my onions. So on the stove, in a pan, in a sauté pan, I have a 1/4 cup of butter, 1/4 cup of olive oil, and that's melted and it's nice and hot, and I have chopped up 1 onion. Now you can also throw the onion in the processor. It's up to you. So I'm just going to quickly process up my celery and my carrots, just because. Why not? I've got the processor here. Might as well just process it up. So it's just great big chunks. Do you see that? Great big chunks. I'm going to add that to my onions. So after I've done that, so I'm going to let my onions and my celery and my carrots sort of saute away until they're nice and tender and aromatic. And to that, I'll add some herbs. I'm going to use fresh sage. I'm going to use powdered sage, so processed sage, and thyme. But while that's working away on the stove, I have to give it a little stir. So that's my onions, my carrots, and my celery. While that's working away on the stove, I want to show you what I do and how I get my breadcrumbs. Now, of course, you can use bread chunks, you can use breadcrumbs, you can do so many things. But what I do is I throw my old bread in the freezer when I've got 2 or 3 left, and I seriously just throw my old bread, chunk it up, and I throw it in the processor, and I put it in a bag and I keep it until I need it later. So either freeze your bread or freeze your bread chunks, and in the processor, it's very, very simple. Now, if you don't want to use breadcrumbs per se, then chunk them up really very big and bulky, or just cut up your bread. Like sometimes if I feel like it, I just cut my bread up into cubes. And so I'm using bread cubes, right, instead of bread crumbs, so it's up to you. So I'm just going to move my processor over, and so I've got my breadcrumbs. So I happen to have had a lot of bread left over, so I processed it, and I've come up with 4 cups of breadcrumbs. So here I go with my breadcrumbs. That's ready to go. After my celery and my onions and my carrots are all sauteed in the pot, what I want to do now is I want to add a 1/2 cup of fresh sage. Now, your fresh sage looks like this. It's lovely. It's so aromatic, and unfortunately I can't grow sage. I can grow rosemary, which I'm going to add to this as well. But I'm going to just chop that up, because what I want to do is I do want to have this sauteing away for about a few minutes with my onions, after my onions are transparent. So just big chunks of sage. It's not, you don't have to worry about it too much. So to that also, I'm lucky enough to have some rosemary in my garden. I have to wash that. Because you never know, we've been getting raccoons out on the back, on our back deck. We've actually had a bear out there, So you never know what they're doing out there when you're not watching. So wash your rosemary, chop that up too with your sage, and that's going to go into my saute pot as well. I think that's ready actually. So that's about 2 tablespoons of rosemary, half a cup of fresh sage. So that goes into my saute pot. And it's just sauteing away back here. It looks beautiful. Now, one of the tricks that I learned actually from a great chef on the Cooking Network is that if you want your meatballs or anything that you add breadcrumbs to, if you want that to be really, really moist, is you add milk to your breadcrumbs. And I always used to think you added more stock or more whatever, but milk really works. So let's just get the milk out. So I'm going to add half a cup of milk to my breadcrumbs right here. And that is going to add an amazing amount of moisture. So I'm just going to stir that in, let that absorb into my breadcrumbs. It becomes a little bit lumpy. Now, on the stove, I have my sage and my rosemary with my onions. I just want to saute it a little bit, and what happens is the sage and the rosemary turn this beautiful bright green. And of course I'm having a nice glass of wine as well because I love to cook with wine. What can I say? It's just a great way to cook. So I'm also going to add to this some chicken stock to my dressing as well. And another little trick, on the stove I have 1 cup of cranberries, your fresh cranberries. They're beautiful. See how beautiful and colorful they are? I have them on the stove and I've just let them kind of reduce. So I'm going to strain them, and I'm actually going to put the cranberries right in my stuffing. Now if you have dried cranberries, use your dried cranberries. So you end up with about a half a cup of cranberries, so I'm going to add that as well. So all these little tricks. I have my stock ready to go. I've done my chopping, so I'm just going to remove my board. And over here now is my saute pot. And I don't know if you can see this, but the sage and the rosemary has turned a really lovely, beautiful, bright green. And that's what you want. So this is ready to go. So to this, I'm going to add my cranberries. So in they go. This just gives it such a nice taste. It's just wonderful. So you don't have to cook this anymore because of course you're going to cook it either in your turkey or outside your turkey, which we'll talk about in just 2 secs. So that goes in. Now I'm going to add my salt and pepper. So a little bit of salt, not too much. Cracked pepper. Love cracked pepper. So I hope, Ronnie, you're following along for your mother and taking notes. But of course I'll have all those bubbles up to give you the whole recipe. But as I said, if you have other stuff in your fridge that you'd like to use up, if you want to use more celery, use more celery. It's not a big deal. Now to that, we should be adding that's a half a teaspoon. So I like sage. So I'm going to add, that's 1 teaspoon and 2 teaspoons of dried sage, and I want a half a teaspoon of thyme right in there. So let's stir that right in. See how that's looking? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now to that, we're going to add our breadcrumbs. So the milk and the breadcrumbs go into my pot. I don't really have to cook it anymore, but I'll leave it in this pot because it's certainly easier to leave it in the saute pot. So stir it around, mix all that up. Can you see that? And you want to get all those flavors up from the bottom. Now you can see this is quite dry. At this point, you could add a half a cup of white wine or a cup of white wine. But what we're going to do is I'm going to add stock. So let's add 1 cup of stock. So you can, this is chicken stock, but you could add vegetable stock, you could add beef if you want. And that is giving me an amazing consistency. That's a beautiful, beautiful consistency. Nice and wet, because when it cooks, it's going to, the moisture is going to reduce out. Now, the very last thing, I would like to add some pecans. So add about, I'd say a cup, maybe, yep, cup of pecans. If you like pecans, add more. If you, how about walnuts? Walnuts would go well, or pine nuts, or so. That is the last ingredient. Now, I have to show you this little trick that I was teaching my students. There's 2 ways you can do this. Well, actually 3 ways. You can stuff your turkey or your chicken. You can spray a casserole dish. Uncover your casserole. Put your stuffing in there. No pun intended. Or you can do it the way we do it at school. So you take a piece of tin foil. On top of that, tear off your parchment paper. So a piece of parchment paper. Spray the parchment paper. And onto that, you're going to place your dressing, your stuffing, dressing, stuffing. I guess this really isn't stuffing because it's not being stuffed. So this is more like dressing. So on goes your, now you might want to divide this into 2 because I think it looks really good when you do it this way. So that's half of the stuffing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll that. So leave off the tin foil. You see that? I'm just going to roll that and tie off the ends. Roll it up. Squish the ends so it ends up like that in a roll. Now I'm going to fold the ends in. I'm going to just roll it up with the tin foil. So now I'm going to roast this in the oven, bake this in the oven. So 350 for half an hour. The beauty is you can do this the day before. You bake it for half an hour, 350 oven. You take it out and you can put it in the fridge and chill it. And then as your guests are arriving, you can just reheat it. But you can slice it first. You can slice it cold and it looks amazing. So I'm going to put 2 of these into my oven tonight. And I'm actually going to freeze this for later on because I actually don't need it tonight. I'm only doing this for you, Ronnie, and for your mom. So 2 of these go into the oven, and that's my stuffing. Remember, everything that you have in your kitchen, you can actually put in stuffing. It depends on what you like. More salt, more pepper, more cranberries, dried cranberries, pine nuts, chickpeas. A stuffing is just another word actually for getting rid of everything that you have in your fridge, like my refrigerator soup. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good night, and I hope, Ronnie's mom, you enjoy this. So here's to our turkey stuffing that we're not going to stuff tonight. But thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye.